Great. Good afternoon, everybody, or evening or morning, wherever you are. My name is Renee Pfister, and I want to thank Dr. Littlepage for inviting me to your class today. If you have further questions, I do not believe I put my email on any of these slides, but it's K as in kangaroo Pfister, F-I-S-T-E-R @murraystate.edu. Let me give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a math professor here, and I've been here a long time, almost 25 years. I worked in cancer research and multiple aspects with student engagement. Currently, I am in the role of the Director of Institutional Effectiveness and Strategic Planning. Within this presentation today, we will talk about performance spending concepts. It's very important at the state level. They are currently working in a concurrence committee with the Senate and the House regarding our budget, and performance spending is one of those aspects that is being discussed. And then I will show you where we have been lately on performance spending. This office has developed a model in conjunction with CPE to make sure our data and connections are exactly right. And then lastly, I'll talk about another aspect that we have done in this office, which involves predicting enrollment. And in the environment we're in, I'm having to make some adjustments to that, but I wanted you to see what we've done here, that companies usually have consulting aspects to do this, and I remind Dr. Jackson regularly that we are doing lots and lots for the university, and we hope to help everybody in that regard. So with performance spending, this is on your slide. I just want you to have some aspects related to different definitions. LI will be low-income students, and they are ones who have received a federal Pell Grant. Not just that they're eligible, which would have been a lot better in a lot of regards, but they have received one. Underrepresented minority students by the Council on Post-Secondary Education's definition is anyone who categorizes themselves as Hispanic or Latino, American Indian or Alaska Native, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, or two or more races. So if you'll notice, Asian is not included there, but if you're Asian and white, you still count in the two or more race category. Surprising information. STEM H refers to science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and health. Bachelor's degree per 100 full-time equivalent, that's FTE. And we talk about FTEs a lot, but those are, it's a calculation in which you take all your bachelor's degrees and divide out by 100 full-time equivalents. And it's supposed to normalize things. But in this model, volume is huge, and as you can understand, larger universities have a greater pool, and you'll see that. There is metric weighting here, so there are items that we'll discuss with the certain metrics: bachelor's degrees, earned credit hours, facilities square feet, and it's not just all facilities square feet, but it's only those attributed to instruction. Instruction and student services costs, so that's referred to as a direct cost. If you go to our audit and look for the direct cost, it would be the sum of those two things. And that is publicly available on our financial website. Then we have full-time equivalent enrollments. All of this is based on a 3-year rolling average. So this year's numbers, which have not come out yet for calculation, even though I have predicted where we will be, but this year's numbers are based on data from the recent year, which is 1920, 1819, and 1718, and so are all the other public institutions. We are in the same sector as University of Kentucky and University of Louisville, so all the publics are in the same sector. As you'll see, there are 3 components: student success, student credit hour, and operational support. I have provided these documents to Dr. Littlepage, so all of this can be looked at further at your convenience. But the only true place that we get student credit or information related to graduate students is in the student credit hour production. And this isn't a trivial calculation. They base it on level as well as courses. So not only level for doctoral students, if you're a doctor of nurse practitioner, you get different weight measurements than if you're a PhD doctorate. So I'm welcome to show you that calculation, but for us, for every single aspect, it's probably 4 or 5 spreadsheets just for our institution. So student success is worth 35%, student credit hours are 35%, and operational support is 30%. I think the better picture here is this graphic that I don't know if it can fit all in one slide, but as you can see across the top are those 3 major areas. And student success is broken down into bachelor's degrees normalized, and they're worth 9%. STEM plus H bachelor degrees, 5%. URM, underrepresented minority bachelor's degrees, 3%. Low income bachelor's degrees, 3%. And then progression. So this is where you as students and faculty and staff can really help us, as well as the bachelor's degrees. But a student that progresses within their first year, if they start as a freshman in the fall, and then they have 30 hours of available credit, which means not audited credit, means they have completed the hours, then that's worth 3%. And then if they continue on that path and have 60 hours, that's a 5% gain. And then at least 90 hours is worth 7%. So all of these percentages on this left component add up to be 35%. As I was talking about the credit hours, those are worth 35% as well, but they're weighted credit hours in which non-resident credit hours are only given half the weight. So if we have a student who's working on, and I'll just pick on nursing again, a doctorate of nurse practitioner or a doctorate in your discipline, then if you are a non-resident student of Kentucky, we only get half the credit for you, even though we are still teaching every student in the same connectivity. So as you can tell, I don't really think that's, I think some things can be changed. The other thing is that for what we call Racer Academy courses here, no credit hours are earned by high school students for college credit is counted. We have a few special high school students that take upper level courses. Those courses aren't counted either. So it's strictly undergraduate and graduate courses in which they count for credit, as well as there's that restriction for non-resident and resident students. Operational support deals with that facility square feet. And as some of you are aware, Woods Hall was taken down, and that had academic components in it. So over the course of the next 3 years, that will affect our square footage. Direct institution and student services costs, so that refers to cost of instruction, as well as the student services that are provided through counseling, testing, as well as those activities for students in general. And then FTE, student enrollment. So I know probably some of you might have questions, and again, feel free to email me or Dr. Littlepage about this. And my office phone number is 270-809-2491. I will be checking email if I happen to be working remotely in this time period. So I'm going to move forward and let you see what our projections were. But before I do that, I would like you to know that for all of the public peer institutions of ours, not UK and U of L, but our peer institution, we have the highest retention rate in the state for those things. We also have the highest graduation rate, which is a 6-year graduation rate. So all of these degrees are just degrees when they're granted, but for IPEDS, which is the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, all schools that receive Title IV funding have to report all of this information. So our graduation rate is the highest among the other public. So, and our undergraduate students who graduate, we have a higher percentage of those students for every public in the state who get out with no federal or state debt. So we're doing a great job here at Murray State. So I want to highlight that for you before I show you this other slide that makes me sick at my stomach.
Dr. Fisher, I do have one question.
Yes.
So given how important it is to track student progress, a question that one of our students may be wondering, do we provide do we associate a code with students so that we can later run reports through Banner when it's time for us to respond to the model?
Well, we don't run reports through Banner, but we do get this information from Banner-like data. Originally, there were 51 different spreadsheets that were used to calculate this, 51 different tabs. We have very smart students here at Murray State, so maybe this will answer your question, Dr. Littlepage. I have hired a student who is a computer science student who has provided code so that this can be pulled out. So now instead of my having to run all this and do the calculations, basically it's 2 or 3 clicks of a button after I upload the data. So we can pull this data. I've still got to have the final data for him to put in. So every year you've got to have this. But he has made this, it's actually right now in an Access database, and then he's going to work on it with a SQL code. So if any of you all know that, so that we can get that information, and as well as this sheet that I've shown you. After we run that, it will take that data and then we'll attribute it to if we're above the sector percent change or not. It won't put it in this nice form, but it'll tell us which ones were above the sector percent change. Now, it's not a sector percent average, but it's a sector percent change. Did that answer your question, Dr. Littlepage?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So if you look at this, the very bottom of this slide says FY19 performance funding dollars. Those are the performance funding dollars that were given in FY19. That total, which we didn't understand at that time, or I didn't, was used for that year, but then it went back into the performance funding pot. So if you see for Murray State, we received $557,800. And in that year, there was no monies put towards the performance funding model. So that was money we gained, but it was not added to our base state appropriation. So that money was put back into the performance funding pool for everybody to fight over again. And I use fight almost literally. So anyway, so all of that total down there was put back in. Now look what happened the next year for FY20. We still made above the sector percent average for 3 of the metrics. And in that year, we had a 1% of our state appropriations went into the fund. Now, it's not totally state appropriations. I have to be careful here. You take out your mandated programs, and then they take out a small school adjustment, and then you take a certain percentage. It's not a trivial calculation either. I wish they could just make this easy. But after that's done, you have what are called allowable funds that are run through the model for each institution. Those percentages that we went over and the 3-year rolling average is used to calculate how much each person makes. So let me just give you an idea of volume. Murray State, I've done this little bit example. So let's suppose UK has 1,000 of whatever. And if Murray State, based on our current percentages, would have approximately 70 of whatever. For us to be able to make more money than the other larger schools, we would have to increase in given measures by 100%, which means double of where we are now. No matter how good we are doing, the volume aspect plays a huge role, and that's been highlighted with the government. Now, let me tell you this too. After that, 557,800 was put back into the pool. The monies that you see next for FY20 was added to all of those schools' bases. So if you see, the schools who have the higher enrollment received more money. That, and we had 400 and something thousand dollars taken out of ours because in FY20 we had to put 1% in. So not only did we receive no money back, we lost $400,000. Now, the hard part about this is that we still made 3 metrics, or we're above 3 metrics. Moorhead was above 3. We received no money. KSU received no money. Kentucky State. Northern was only above in 2 categories, yet they received $4.3 million. It's not, in my opinion, who is performing, because each of these schools is performing. It's the volume aspect that's critical. And also in this current year that I've just done the work, we have a 2% hold harmless. Excuse me, a 2% stop loss, which means $827,000 goes to this pool. If I'm understanding all the data right, I pulled all the data that is publicly available. Progression information, credit hour is not publicly available. I'll have to wait till I get that from CPE. But I have looked at the data and done a progression analysis about, over the last 5 years, how much have people changed. And as of right now, I'm still getting that we will either get nothing or very little in the performance funding model. I didn't want to show that to you right yet because they are debating that issue, if it's the House budget that they go with or the Senate or a combination of both. It could affect the money. Now you say, well, why does that matter? The data is the data. Right. But unless there's a certain amount put forward into the performance funding pool that I have looked at the information, we will not receive money. And that money has to be pretty significant in the millions of dollars. So totally with these universities, with the 2% that all of us have put in, that comes to about $11.6 million. If the government puts in more money, then that goes on top of that. But as you can see, we put in $800,000 of the $11 million. And as of right now, we won't get any of that return. Again, I don't want to preempt this because the pre-conference committee is discussing the budget right now. So that's one problem. I'm sure Dr. Littlepage has talked about other things that are challenging for us budget-wise, and that's our pension. So if this is a hit, and then the pension situation comes through, currently what the law, and let me say this, and let me go back to performance funding. If they do not pass, that there's a 2% stop loss in place as of July 1, 100% of our base is at risk for any succeeding year. I've done the model 10 years out with using data that I have and just assumed we have the same data. We fluctuate highly. Even University of Kentucky fluctuates highly. I don't think they want that because one year they may gain $30 million and the next year they lose $40 million. So you can't budget on that. So the Jordan Smith, Director of Government Relations and Institutional Relations, as well as President, have very much been in contact with them to get that 2% floor in place. And I think all the universities presidents signed off on that. So that's important. With the pension aspect, UK and U of L are not in the pension, the state pension that the rest of the institutions are in. So therefore, if something is done for all of the other 6, there's always going to be a question about what are you doing for UK and U of L. Currently, the House budget provides some help for that with a freeze, I believe a freeze. It's like it's wording in there that will not allow the pension for the Kentucky Employees Retirement System to go up past 49%. I think it goes up to half of that, 60 something percent. I'm not totally for sure, so don't quote me on that. But if that is not passed, then for a Kentucky employee that's not a teacher, not the teacher retirement system, but those who are groundskeepers, those who are administrative professionals, who do not have basically it's somebody who does not have a 4-year degree. Let me put it this way. Currently, if somebody made $100, then we're putting in 50 more every year to pay for their retirement. If it doesn't stop at 49%, it's projected for next year to go up to 90 or 93%. So for one person, we're really paying for two. So that's why a lot of things have happened with the work that the university has done for outsourcing. It's not because we don't have great people doing great work here for the students, faculty, and staff. It's because if we don't, we would lose jobs in the Murray area because we can't afford to pay what that is. So that's Renee's impression. So I'm sure when you listen to board meetings and all of that, there are some other pieces of information you'll find. So Dr. Littlepage, are there any other questions on this graph? Do you think everybody will get that?
No, but it sounds as if the hope is that there will be some kind of home hardless provision put in here so that institutions like Morehead and Murray State, who have clearly demonstrated levels of success, won't be penalized due to a volume issue. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Right. So the House budget has provided some of that will offset this, that will really help. Also, it's hard because Morehead, Murray State, and Kentucky State, as well as the other schools, but proportionally, we have a lot of first generation as well as low income students, as well as underrepresented minority who fall into all of those categories. So when you look at it locationally, where we are helping those environments tremendously. And the students, we have such a great effect on the students for all of us, and don't want to see that go by the wayside. But we just have to budget accordingly.
I do have one other question. So in terms of the performance matrix, specifically related to student success outcomes, are we looking at areas within the institution to kind of shore up some of those points of success? Because I look at like low income bachelor, student progression to 30, 60, 90. Are there some initiatives being put in place, Dr. Pfister, to get us closer to reaching those metrics?
The last 2 summers, we've done something for the 30, 60, 90 to allow students to take a summer course here with a reduction in cost. And with everything that's occurred this year, we just hadn't had time to get that in place. But that has helped because to get those students before they arrive in the fall to that next marker gives you an extra tick mark, if you will. And I know that sounds crass when you're talking about a student as an extra mark, but it also moves the student forward. So they're not paying as much money. If they get to 30 hours in their first year and then 60 hours in the next, then they're on progression to graduate and to get out of here and to save them money and to move on into their careers. For the URM, Dr. Carthel's area, as well as Rosalind White and Cammie Duffy have worked on things, as well as there's a presidential task force related to faculty, staff, and students that have been working on this. The low income is also within there. Starfish for faculty and staff has been critical for information to go forward. So all of these measures have helped. The university has done a great job of reducing the number of hours, and you think that sounds crazy, but the average number of hours to graduate used to be 140 at this institution because of a lot of accreditations and programs. It's down to about 132 is the median. But sometimes some of those we're not going to be able to change because it's an accreditation issue. In engineering, it's required. In music, it's required. But those things maybe can happen during the summer, can work through those aspects. So yes, there are initiatives in place. The best aspect that we have is a quote that we all work on here. What can we best do for the student?
Yeah.
Now, why does that affect us? It's not that we don't care about faculty and staff, because if we're doing the best for the students, then ultimately we're going to be doing the best for the faculty and staff. Okay, so let me go on and move into the scoring idea. So this is a different aspect, the predictive analysis scoring work and admit comparison yield strategies. So can you see this? Nope. I think I lost you. Nope. Let me share it one more time. There it goes. There we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You got it now? Okay,
Got
great. So just to give you a little bit of background, a year and a half ago, I was fortunate enough to move into this office and have a great team, but we didn't have any mechanism to say otherwise. What's the probability? What's the chance of this student enrolling at Murray State as a first-time freshman? We've looked at first-time transfers, and those first-time freshmen involved international students. So enrollment had been fluctuating with first-time freshman students. It had gone from 1468 to 1502, back to 1400. And then in 2018, we only had 1,319 first-time freshmen. So that was a huge challenge for lots of avenues, not just revenue, but also for what we were doing to affect change in our demographic region. So what was developed is a scoring system with work with academics. I mean, this was a joint effort with enrollment management, academics, student success. But the point with academics is that over the Christmas holiday or over the winter break in 2018, psychology professors who were working on some statistical projects ran multiple aspects. And I had come up with these 11 measures, doing research and looking at other institutions. And they confirmed that these were, they may not have been the most strong predictors, but they were good predictors for if a student was going to come to Murray State. So right now we have an ACT component with a requirement of 2.0 above. Summer orientation for us, if they register, is a good indicator, but if they attend, those who attend summer orientation, 95% enroll. So those pieces of information weren't known before we started this. So you can see all of these information components. For us, the FAFSA has to be started and completed, and every student has to do the FAFSA in order to receive any scholarship from the university. Now, it doesn't mean you have to have it done before you apply for scholarship. It just means it has to be completed before you receive scholarship money. Demographic region is important. The 18 county service region is where we get our highest percentage of students for first-time freshmen. Academic achievement scholarship is that was received. I've been working with scholarship and financial aid. I get a report every week that tells me every student by their M number who has received a grid scholarship, if you will, in academic achievement, who has either submitted a scholarship or received a foundation scholarship. So Racer Academy, if you have attended Racer Academy at Murray State, that was seen to be a predictor of first generation. If you've done a housing deposit, or if you've gotten a waiver for a housing deposit, that shows grit, institution aspect. Financial aid, if it's been awarded. and if you're a low income student. So let me just give you the framework of how this idea works. Some of you have had statistics, so this is a baby kind of statistics idea, but it's expected value. Every one of you, if Dr. Littlepage grades and says this is worth 20%, this is worth 15%, this is worth 40%, if you have any faculty and staff who do that up to 100%, they're doing an expected value to get your grade. So if you want to think about it this way, this is an expected value. You multiply each percentage on the left column by the score that you receive in the right column. So some of these are either all or none. So if you have registered or attended summer O, you get a 5. If you've had a campus visit, you get a 5. Your ACT and GPA combo is based on the percentage of students who we've had enroll in the past. Our sweet spot, if you will, are 24 and 25 ACT. So those get the highest points. Those get 4s and 5s. Even though you might be a genius student and get a 32, we, as a whole, do not get as high a percentage of those students. So that's how these categories were determined. Location is based on if you're in the 18 county, if you're from Illinois, you get a different point, if you will. So you might get a 4, you might get a 3, as well as the percentage of students who enroll who are Racer Academy students versus not. So those scores are there. Now let me say this very carefully. If you start off with a 5 in each category, then you should have a 5 at the end because you get 100% of those 5. If you start off and have a 5 and a 4 and a 3, the percentages that you multiply by and the ultimate score that you get will be any number between 0 and 5. So every time I do these scoring graphs, I get an answer that's between 0 and 5. And I give this information to Dr. Jackson and to Dr. Robertson every week. I run this every single week, starting in about October, and then I run it as a comparison to the last year. Well, that first year was pretty fun because we didn't have any comparison. Nobody had ever done it. So there's the scoring formula down there again for you. You can see how it's multiplied out. But you can see that 20% for summer O, so that's the highest, is 20% because we know summer O is so important. And with this summer, with changes happening, that's even going to be more important how we adjust that if we do a virtual summer O and or if we have an on-campus combination. But I just wanted you to see, and I know this is small, but I've listed persons A through H. Here's their exam GPA, summer O registered or attended, and I've just given, like, here were numbers, but all of these I've given you yeses or no's. So if you look across A, this category that I would put this person in is a 2.75 after I do all of that work. Notice their actual score is a 2.72. But I've done the categories so that everybody gets in a different score. And these scores are broken down into quarters. So anybody that has a 2 or below, we put in that category. We have about, at the end of last year, about a third of our students are in the 2.0 and below category. In that category, last year, we got 2 to enroll. So when I give this information to Dr. Robertson and to Dr. Jackson, Dr. Robertson then provides information to enrollment management, and they have a grid that looks like this: yes, no, yes, no. And then they know who to call, text, email that week to say, hey, I saw you finished your scholarship application this week. Congratulations. And to keep in contact with those people. We didn't have this before either. This information is also sent out in this format without the low income, because with federal restrictions, we can't say if somebody's low income or not. To branding, marketing, communication. So with their social media, excuse me, information, they then target it through Facebook, through Instagram, to target those persons in a geographic area based on if they finished scholarships and other aspects. So let me just, I didn't provide you a graph, but I have a graph that shows this week, this year to last week, this week last year, and we can tell how many more students are in the 3.0 and above category. And why is that important? Last year, when we finished, I looked at how many of those admitted students, after we eliminated most of the not coming, because they'll sometimes tell you, sometimes they won't. How many of those admitted students did we enroll in each category? We know as an institution from last year, and it's just 1 year, but it's still 1 year's worth of data, that if they get in a 3.0 category, last year we got 85% of those people. If they get above that in a 3.5 up to the 4.5, we get 95% of them. So that is critical into how people talk to others. And I know this seems very bland and very non-personal, but the benefit of this is to make it personal, is to say, how can we help you? Because we know that you have not submitted your scholarship applications, and there are still scholarships on the table, even though the scholarship deadline has passed. And with the world changing the way it is right now, we understand, and I've done research very minimally because we haven't had a pandemic before, but looking at schools in other nations, and if they had a major crisis in between when their academic year started, what percentage of those students came from right around their university? And we have seen that that increase has been anywhere from, I think one school, they had a Hawaii situation, and so the University of Hawaii, it was from 10 to 30% increase in those people who were just right there. So that focuses what we need to do. And Dr. Littlepage, you need to cut me off if I'm going too long.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, in our class, Dr. Fisher, we talk about the importance of predicting or forecasting, you know, revenue. Mm-hmm. And how important it is when the institution's planning for the next fiscal year's budget.
Right.
And if those predictions are off, whether it be enrollment, whether it be housing, whether it be retention predictions, whatever, it can really have a lasting effect on your budget for the next fiscal year.
Right.
And so I commend you for the work that you've done on this, because the closer we can get with these predictions, the better off we're going to be fiscally for the next year.
Yes, and last year I was pretty accurate. I was about, I think I was off between 20 and 30 students in July for first-time freshmen. And when we got into August, because I had more information, I only missed it by about 15 students. So that was good. Housing is a little bit different. I've been working with them, but I also work with the Vice President for Finance and Administrative Services, because she has to acclimate the budget. And so the question was, in June of last year, what was the thought? You know, do we actually say we have growth, or did we just budget flat? And so that was a discussion point, and I was glad to be able to provide some data. Let me just try to quickly go through this. These are admit comparison yield strategies. So each week, in addition to giving all that scoring, we do range predictions with the yield rate. So it's yield rate per a certain category. So I know how many students we admitted last year and how many enrolled from the 18 counties. So that's a yield rate. I use the yield rate as a drill down for the last 3 years, and then work on specific county levels, international, underrepresented minorities, the St. Louis area, Jefferson, Oldham, lots of different things that people are interested in to get that information. So I review the admit numbers for the first-time freshmen. So FTF is first-time freshmen, FTT is first-time transfer, and the graduate students. So I review those admit numbers for the last 3 years, and then I use those yield rates per category and a mathematical model that we developed to provide a cumulative range of those per category and in total, so that the president wants to see it every week based on, well, where were we last year at this time in your predictions? And based on those numbers, where do you think we'll be? So that's one aspect. That's a Monday night component. Tuesday morning is the confidence interval. So I use a statistical 95% confidence interval to give an estimate. The good thing is that the range predictions uses a different mathematical mechanism than the confidence intervals. But those numbers are within about 10 or 15 on the lower bound and upper bound. So I feel pretty confident in what we're doing. So are they significant? If you looked at those two things, I think they're statistically significant is what I'm trying to get at, that the p-value would be less than 0.05 if we're looking at a 5% error rate. Okay, so reports, I guess I'm patting myself on the back here. I have about 10 to 15 that I provide weekly to enrollment management, branding, marketing, communication, and I just wanted you to see a snippet of the aspects, and this was actually last week's information, not this current week, but over spring break. Just because spring break happens, that doesn't mean these reports quit, you know, so these continue every single week. So just to let you know, these are first-time freshmen completed applications, admitted, denied, and not coming. So for fall of 19, we had 6688, and for fall of 20, we had this many. So we're up, which is good in the number of applications. This is the number of total admitted and the not coming students. So that means that a few students have told us that they're not coming at this time. That means that we don't just shove them to the side, because in our environment and even last year, some students make a different choice. And then you can see that it's just a strict difference, and then we use a percent change. So you can tell that I look at the 18 county region. These counties, which are the next over from our 18 county service region, are quite important in that valley, and we've increased considerably there. The other Kentucky counties, it just so happened that this last week that we were at the same level if you looked at every other county, and you can see that for total Kentucky we've increased. But I do this for Illinois, Missouri, Tennessee, Indiana, because those are our most prominent states. With our decrease in our tuition costs for this next year, especially, we thought it would help with international students. I don't know if anybody will get visas now, but that was the hope. So within the model, I have put a component on there to not get rid of all the international students, but to downweight them. So I wanted to share some of this with you to let you know that even though I'm not teaching in the classroom every day now, I do this as my teaching mechanism. Thanks, Dr. Littlepage.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. This definitely marries well with some of the things that we've been discussing in PSE 760. And I know that it takes a lot of work. You spent the last 45 minutes or so explaining it, but I know there's just so much involved in what you're doing, but it's definitely helping out our institution. So I appreciate your time.
Well, go Racers. That's what we're all about, is help the students and help the institution.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was good.